He's reeling from the Kite Runner, and now you're going to cheer him up, I think, with this one, right?
Oh my goodness, am I? So, Kite Runner, we were just talking about how you don't feel good at the end. I just read The Iron Heel by Jack London. I feel like this book changed me.
Oh, wow.
Like, this book, I was... Okay, I get through the first half, and I'm like, okay, this has a lot of good things to say. Get through, I go a couple chapters, and I'm like, all right, I gotta put this down. Then another, 2 chapters, and I gotta put it down. I'm like, okay, 1 chapter at a time now.
God, right. Okay.
Like, I got to the last 8 pages, or whatever it is, and I'm just like, can I finish this book?
So it looks long enough, though. It looks a couple hundred pages, right?
About 300 pages. Okay. Now, I'm saying I don't know if I can finish this book, because it's just so heavy. Like, I felt the weight of this book at the end.
Yeah. I just weighed the book in my hand there.
Yeah. All right, let me go ahead and give the overview of this.
Okay.
I'm actually just going to read the back because it explains it quite well. Jack London presents a fictional Everhard manuscript, hidden and found centuries in the future. This book is a platform for him to espouse his socialist views and predict the collapse of capitalism. Very different from his other action novels, it envisions a future oligarchy tyranny in America and the rise of the Socialist Party. The book has been credited with influencing George Orwell's 1984. This was written in 1908, the first dystopian novel that I am aware of. I talked about We, which is 1922, I believe, followed then by Brave New World, then 1984, then Fahrenheit, I believe.
Okay. For
the ones that we most talk about.
So this being before Orwell makes it very interesting to me.
Yes. So basically the way that it's written is... It's a manuscript by this woman from 1908 talking about her and her husband. Her husband leads the socialists and helps lead the revolt against the oligarchy and the Iron Heel. One of the chapters here is Slaves of the Machine.
Okay.
But most pages will have footnotes on them from academics from the year 3100 or something, several hundred years in the future.
That's really, really cool, I think.
I think it's quite nice. And then you get later...
I've not seen that before.
No, I've not. And then you get some really, really late in here that's just page of notes and stuff like that. Half the page and the rest is just notes. So I think it's quite good in that case. The first part of it is the philosophy that Jack London's going for here, basically saying, right, you are with the ruling class, you could be helping people, but why are you not? There's even, talking about how the rich act in this. You have the church as part of this. There's a bishop character who's quite interesting.
Is he a bishop?
There's no actor, I don't think. Oh. I'm sorry. I only took one picture of this. Here, the bishop says, but that is not the teaching of Christ. Then our main character, the church is not teaching Christ these days, Ernest put in quickly. That is why the working man will have nothing to do with the church. The church condones the frightful brutality and the savagery with which the capitalist class treats the working class. The church does not condone it, the bishop objected. The church does not protest against it, Ernest replied. And insofar as the church does not protest, it condones, for remember the church is supported by the capitalist class. Which is very interesting because that's basically what happened in the 1950s. Basically, corporations were like, well, lots of unions are starting up. What we can do is we can get the church to be along with us. And so that's how they get some of the really famous pastors from then to then work with them to be like, well, unions are against God.
Oh, of course.
And
famously.
Yeah. And it's actually really good to help out your bosses and all that. And it's really interesting to see it, that is predicting it, 40 years in the future, it seems like. But they're talking about the Rothschilds throughout this a little bit, and they have some character names that you will love. Mrs. Pertonwaithe.
Oh, nice!
Yes. I know you will love this book, but then we get halfway through, and Ernest is elected to Congress. Then a bomb goes off in Congress, and they're blaming it on the socialists. Because, of course, it just has to be them. Of course, the courts and all the lawyers are owned by the capitalists because they're the ones who own everything.
So where's the fiction?
There is no fiction to this book. That's why it's so heavy. I do like the bishop, though, because he's like, right, you've told me the story of this terrible thing that happened to this man. I'm going to go out and see what things are like. And then he comes back and he's like, right, we need to be actually following Jesus and going out and helping people. And everyone's like, this man is crazy. We need to lock him up. And then he goes into an asylum and he's tortured, basically.
God.
Yeah, he's actually tortured. And he comes back and he's like, right, so I guess we should follow what the government says. And then he disappears. But then we see that he's working class. He's saved all of his money, left everything behind, and he's doing what he believes the Bible says. Mm-hmm. Because after he gives that speech, he's like, right, no, actually, don't do what the oligarchy says. You really can't do this. And he's giving all of his money to help people in these areas. And
good.
Like, he actually does some really good things, but still dies at the end. He's just a body that they see during an attack in Chicago. And so, like...
Wow.
Yeah. The second half of the book is basically war.
Does it go downhill then? Like, I typically don't like war stuff.
No. So war is actually only like the last 50 pages.
Okay.
But there's a little bit of like, right, we have to escape from jail a little bit. We have to create new identities, get together, get some plans. They talk about spies and what they were able to do in the second, third revolts, but we're only in the first revolt.
Right.
So you already know that there's like a 7th and 8th at the very, very beginning.
Ah, okay.
So you kind of know where this is going. But we don't see necessarily the death of your main characters. It just says, like, the last chapter says, it was not until Ernest and I were back in New York, and after weeks had elapsed, that we were able to comprehend thoroughly the sweep of the disaster that had befallen the cause. Things go really bad. There's bodies everywhere. It's bloody. It's ruthless. Like, it hurt me inside to read this book in a way. But in a way that I think you felt with 1984.
I was going to say, it sounds like my 1984 for you.
Yeah. And my headcanon for this is that this is how 1984 started. Like, this is... Because it feels like...
It feels like a prequel.
It feels like a prequel to 1984. And 1984 is just, this is the perfect society that the government wants. But then we have the authors at the end of this saying, it does get better. This is a utopian. But they talk about, like, insurance as just these terrible things that, why did people need this back then? It's just a horror. They had to explain stuff like that. But Marx is only mentioned once, which seems a little odd to me.
Okay. So, the thing is, I always see 1984 as like, well, this is what we're going towards. I still feel that way. But this sounds like...
This is our present.
This is our present, yeah. This is what we're doing today.
This is our present, and it's like, this is
that
where we have to start.
That makes the most realistic of the dystopias, right?
Yes.
Because we're in it.
It is the most realistic. And then to me, that, like, we are at the breaking point right now, at this part in the novel. And it only gets worse. So it's so disheartening that way.
Yeah.
But they go into the philosophy of, like, prophets just being impossible. They break it down so nicely to, like, lay people. Basically saying, right, you make shoes. The shoes are worth 100 just in leather. Then, you making them into shoes adds another 100 in value. That's 200. Let's say that 100 goes into that. That all goes back into everything. That's fine. You get 50 and the company gets 50. None of you will be able to buy the shoes, though.
Yes.
You'd have to save up 4 times as much to be able to get these shoes. The company is not going to buy the shoes. That goes into investment. So now what happens with all these shoes that you make, that only, like, you'll only be able to buy a quarter of the shoes. Just ever. So then, what happens? Well, you either throw the shoes away, or... there's so much surplus that it leads to economic collapse for the working class. Yeah. And that's a huge part of the philosophy there.
Well, we live in a world where they make a bunch of stuff and they do throw it all away and then just keep churning out more garbage. Like, that's what happens. That's sad.
It can help. But then they're like, well, we can put our surplus onto other countries. We can give the shoes to them, but then they sell the shoes, and then they make money, and then they have a surplus. Then they have to put it on another country. And then every country just collapses at that point.
Do you think... does it make it seem like that's inevitable in the real world? Because I do sometimes wonder.
It's basically how profits work.
Capitalism seems inherently flawed to me, and always has. And it's always like, well, we're just trying to do this, and we're trying to get more profit.
What happens if you run out of material?
I don't know. I said this to you before, but like every company can't grow all the time. Like the whole model doesn't seem like it works. And then you of course they hit the nail on the head. Well, then okay, we start exploiting another country or something, and then what do they do then? Like capitalism is a system where everyone's not winning. You know?
Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely like I didn't know they used words like oligarchy back in 1908.
It's an ancient Greek word, so
is it? I only thought of it like the definition is like Russia.
Okay, that's what we'd say now. Yeah, no, comes from ancient Athens.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, fantastic dystopian book. This is so painful to read. It's so heavy, but it's so important at the same time. I think it's a book, like you say, 1984, everyone has to read at some point. This is one that everyone has to read as well.
Okay. Do I have to read it?
I think so. I want you to read this for next month.
Do I read it next month? That was the question, yeah, okay.
Because then I also want to give it to another person I've been talking to about this.
Okay, good. This is what I do with 1984. I'm always lending it out. This is fantastic.
Oh, I'm not lending it out. I am giving it to him. Because he's actually really interested in like growing his collection and stuff.
Do we give it a yeah, first of all?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's...
Oh,
it hurts.
It's good that this is a reaction you want from a book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It is... I mean... It is the best book I've read since last January when I read We've Always Lived in the Castle. That one I loved. This one I hate.
You hate it, of course.
because of how much it makes me feel.
Yeah. Wow.
But in a good way. Yeah, it is... Yeah, it's very, very, very powerful.
I feel like I do need to read it, especially because I do love 1984, and it essentially does sound like a prequel. It's like, here's... Can we use this to learn how not to get there?
Yes. I feel like it's how we go from what we're in now to like succeeding. Like maybe we can succeed in places. We don't have to have 8 revolutions throughout 700 years or whatever it is.
Sure, ideally we wouldn't need to. Have I ever told you about the iron law of oligarchy? It's a theory that no matter what political system you start with, you end up, given enough time, you end up with oligarchy. So, I mean, you see already now how democracy can turn into oligarchy, right? That's pretty easy to see. And that's what happened in ancient Greece. The Democrats voted themselves tyrants to take over, essentially, because they declared an emergency. That's the 101. Like, the stuff the Nazis did or whatever, that all came from ancient Greece. Like, declare emergency. I think it's easy enough to see how aristocracy can become oligarchy, because, like, the rich old families start to get poorer, and then, like, people who are making money and, like, capitalists can become the new ruling class versus the old landed, so that's quite easy. Monarchy eventually leads to aristocracy because kings always kind of need help and eventually bring in aristocracy. That eventually leads to oligarchy. Democracy leads to oligarchy going the other direction. So there is this theory that no matter what system you start with, you will eventually always end up with oligarchy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to say about it is they're talking about the utopia. I want that utopia to then be Brave New World.
Ah, yeah, well, that's the thing, yeah.
That would be very interesting to see, like, if that's where it went.
That could be interesting, yeah. Do we have to read Utopia, like Thomas More's Utopia at some point? I'm just worried it's going to be really dull.
It's going to hurt me inside. I'll let you do that, and then you tell me about it.
Sure. Yeah.
You're not going to like it as much as your dystopias.
I'll be able to get it out of the library, probably, so I guess I can. Good. This sounds powerful, and it sounds like you really enjoyed it. It's not
very good.
Necessarily the right word, but...
Yes, I mean... It was one that I'm like, this is going to be one that sticks with me in a really, really important way.